There is a book, older than the Bible you were handed as a child, a book that claims to hold the hidden history behind the very first page of Genesis. It says it was not written by a man at all. It says it was spoken aloud on the top of a burning mountain, dictated word by word to Moses by an angel who stood in the presence of God. It tells the whole story of the world, from the first day of creation to the fires of Sinai, but it tells it differently. It fills in the silences. It names the angels. It counts the years in a way no other book dares to count them. And for that, the Church of the West set it aside. They called it lesser. They called it little. They let it slip quietly into the dark. But it did not disappear. Deep in the highlands of Ethiopia, kept safe in monasteries carved from living rock, this book was copied and recopied for more than 1,000 years, in an ancient language few outsiders could read. And far away, in the dry caves above the Dead Sea, hidden in clay jars for 2,000 years, fragments of it waited in the dark until the day a shepherd stumbled upon them. It survived. Every jubilee, every week of years, every secret it carried about the beginning of all things. Tonight you will hear it. Tonight we will open the Book of Jubilees together. But maybe before we begin, I should speak to you and not to history. Maybe you have been keeping time by everyone else's clock for a long while now, living by a calendar that never quite gives you rest. Measuring your life in deadlines and debts and the things you meant to finish but did not. Maybe there is a quiet feeling you carry, that you have somehow fallen out of step, that everyone else knows the rhythm and you missed it, that you are behind and you can never catch up, and the tiredness of it has settled into a place that sleep alone cannot reach. If that is you, then you have come to the right book on the right night. Because underneath all its strange numbers and its ancient names, beneath the angels and the giants and the secret calendar of the heavens, the Book of Jubilees is really about one thing, and it is the very thing you need to hear. It is about a God who built rest into the shape of time itself, a God who set a limit on every debt, a God who wrote release and freedom and homecoming into the calendar of the world, so that no one would be lost forever, and no burden would be carried without end. So close your eyes now. You do not need to watch. You do not need to understand every word. Let the noise of the day fade away. Let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders drop. You are safe here. You are held. And tonight, one of the oldest and most quietly forbidden books in all of history is going to open its doors. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The Book That Was Whispered on the Mountain. Who wrote the Book of Jubilees? Before we walk through its visions of angels and giants and a hidden calendar of the heavens, we have to sit for a moment with a stranger question. Not who wrote it, but who is speaking in it. Picture a mountain in the desert, its peak wrapped in cloud and fire. This is Sinai. The people of Israel have been led out of slavery, out of Egypt, out of the land where they made bricks under the whip of Pharaoh, and they have come at last to this holy and terrible place. And their leader, an old man named Moses, has climbed up into the smoke and the thunder to meet with God. The Bible tells us he stayed there 40 days and 40 nights, 40 days without bread, 40 days without water, 40 days inside the cloud. We are told in the book of Exodus that God gave Moses the law on those days, the commandments carved in stone. But the Book of Jubilees claims that something more happened up there in the fire. It claims that God did not only give Moses laws, he gave him a story. He commanded one of the highest angels, an angel Jubilees calls the angel of the presence, to sit beside Moses and to tell him everything. The whole history of the world, from the very first day, exactly as heaven remembered it, and Moses, it says, wrote it down. So the voice that speaks through almost the entire Book of Jubilees is not the voice of a man. It is the patient, unhurried voice of an angel who was there. An angel who watched the light divide from the darkness. An angel who stood at the gate of Eden. An angel who saw the flood rise and fall. And now that same angel leans close to a trembling old prophet on a mountaintop and begins gently at the beginning. Let me tell you, he seems to say, how it truly was. Breathe for a moment. Let that image settle into the quiet. An angel telling a story so that it would not be lost. Picture the mountain itself, the way the book invites us to imagine it. Sinai stands alone in a wilderness of stone and sand, its peak lost in a cloud that came down and rested on it like a living thing. From below, the people watch and tremble. There is thunder in the cloud, and a light that flickers within it, and a sound like a trumpet growing louder and louder. They are afraid to come near. And into that cloud alone the old prophet climbs, up past the last of the scrub and the bare rock, up into the smoke, until the world below disappears, and there is only the presence, and the fire, and the voice. 40 days he stays there, 40 days without bread, without water, held up by something other than food. And in that long silence, wrapped in cloud, the angel begins to speak, and Moses begins to write. There is something almost unbearably tender in that picture, if you let yourself feel it. A tired old man who had already led a whole people out of slavery, who had already stood before Pharaoh and parted the sea and carried the complaints of a nation on his shoulders. That man is invited at last to simply sit, to stop leading for 40 days, to stop carrying, to do nothing but listen while heaven tells him the truth about the world. The mountain for Moses was not only a place of law and fire. It was the one place where he was allowed to lay everything down and be told a story, the way a child is told a story at the end of a long day. Rest here a moment, because I think that is a picture of where you are right now. You have been carrying things too. You have been leading and managing and holding it together and standing before your own pharaohs. And tonight you are being invited up the mountain, not to carry anything, not to solve anything, not even to understand everything, but simply to lie still in the cloud and let the story be told over you. You do not have to climb it in your own strength. You are already here. The voice is already speaking. All that is asked of you is to listen and to rest. Scholars believe the Book of Jubilees was actually written down in Hebrew somewhere around the 2nd century before Christ, more than 2,000 years ago. It is sometimes called the Little Genesis, not because it is small in importance, but because it retells the book of Genesis in a different key, adding names and dates and details that the older book left in shadow. In Ethiopia, where it was most faithfully preserved, they gave it another name entirely. They called it Kufale, the Book of the Division of the Days, and that name tells you what it treasures most. Time, the dividing of time, the counting of the years. Sit with those names for a moment because they tell you the whole heart of the book before we have even opened it properly. Little Genesis, a second telling of the beginning, quieter and stranger than the first, filling in what the first left in shadow. And the Book of the Division of the Days, a book obsessed, tenderly obsessed, with the shape and the counting and the sacredness of time. Some ancient writers even reached for the word apocalypse when they spoke of it, which does not mean disaster the way we use it now, but simply an unveiling, a lifting of the curtain, a showing of hidden things. That is what this book believes itself to be. Not a new law, not a rival Bible, an unveiling, a quiet lifting of the curtain on the hidden history behind the history you already know. Breathe here, and let that be your posture for the whole night. You are not being asked to believe anything or to master anything. You are simply being shown something old and hidden, gently, the way a curtain is drawn back at the end of the day. Now I want to bring this back to you, where you are lying right now in the dark. There is something tender in the idea that God would command an angel not just to give a law, but to tell a story. Laws tell you what to do. Stories tell you that you belong to something older and larger than your one small, tired life. You were not dropped into a world with no history. You are the latest page in a book that was being written long before you were born and will be written long after you sleep tonight. You are part of the telling. You are not an accident in it. You are not forgotten by it. So as the cloud settles over the mountain and the angel clears his throat to begin, let us go with Moses. Let us listen the way he listened, not to master it, but to receive it. And in the next chapter, the angel will do the very first thing any storyteller must do. He will take us back to the beginning, to the first of all days, when God spoke and the light came. And you will hear what Jubilees says God made on that day that Genesis never told you. Rest now, we are only beginning. Chapter 2, The 7 Days and the Angels Made in the Morning. Have you ever stood outside on a clear night and felt how enormous the sky is and how small you are beneath it? That feeling, that mixture of wonder and smallness, is the feeling the Book of Jubilees wants to give you tonight as its angel begins to speak of the first week of the world. The book of Genesis, the one in your Bible, opens with words you may know by heart. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it walks day by day through the making of the world. Light on the first day, sky on the second, sea and land and green growing things on the third, sun and moon and stars on the fourth, fish and birds on the fifth, beasts and, at last, humankind on the sixth, and on the seventh, rest. The Book of Jubilees follows this same path, but it pauses on the first day and adds something that Genesis never mentions, something quiet and astonishing. It says that on the very first day, before the sun, before the stars, before the sea, God made the angels. All of them, whole armies of them, brought into being in a single morning. And it does not leave them nameless. It tells us there were angels of the presence, the highest of all, who stand before the face of God. There were angels of sanctification, set apart for holy service. And then there were angels for everything else. Angels of the winds, angels of the clouds, angels of the frost and the hail and the snow, angels of the thunder and the lightning, angels appointed over the deep places, over the seasons, over the heat and the cold. In the world of Jubilees, nothing is truly empty. The wind that moves across your window tonight has, in its telling, a keeper. The frost on the glass in the morning has a guardian. Every corner of creation is watched over. Every corner is tended. Let that sit for a moment. In the oldest imagination of this book, you do not live in a cold and unattended universe. You live in a world thick with keepers, full of quiet presences, tended in every corner by beings made of light on the first morning of everything. The rain has a keeper. The wind has a keeper. The turning of the seasons has a keeper. And if the frost on the window and the clouds in the sky are watched over and tended, then how much more, the book would gently insist, are you? You are not the one small, unattended thing in a world full of care. You are watched over too. You are tended too. You have a keeper too. Breathe deeply, let your shoulders drop. The angel goes on. On the second day, the great vault of the sky. On the third, the waters gathered, and the dry land appeared, and the earth put forth grass and herb and tree. On the fourth, the lights in the heavens. And here Jubilees lingers, because to this book the sun and the moon and the stars are not merely beautiful. They are a clock. They are the great timekeepers of the world, set in the sky to mark the days and the weeks and the appointed seasons. Remember that. It will matter more than you know before the night is through. On the fifth day, the creatures of the water and the birds of the air. Imagine it as the book imagines it. The seas suddenly alive, silver and teeming, great creatures moving in the deep places, and the sky filling with wings. On the sixth, the animals of the land, every kind of creeping and walking thing, and then, last of all, the human beings, male and female, formed and blessed. And Jubilees counts it all with the care of an accountant of eternity. 22 kinds of work in the 6 days, it says, matching, it claims, 22 generations from Adam down to Jacob. Let that patient counting be a comfort to you and not a burden. There is something soothing in a God who does not fling the world together in a careless rush, but builds it, day by ordered day, each thing in its season, each creature in its turn, nothing hurried, nothing skipped, nothing forgotten. The Book of Jubilees wants you to feel the unhurried care of the Maker, light first, then the space for it to shine. The waters gathered, then the land to hold them, the green things, then the creatures to feed among them. The whole world laid down gently in order, like a parent preparing a room before the child arrives. Breathe here, and let that care settle over your own life. You were not flung carelessly into the world either. In the vision of this ancient book, you were made on the 6th day, the last and most tended work, into a world already prepared for you. The light already shining, the seas already full, the fields already green, the very air already tended by its keepers. Everything you needed was set in place before you drew your first breath. And the God who prepared the world with such patient, unhurried care did not stop caring on the 7th day. He is caring for you still, in order, in season, nothing forgotten. You are not an afterthought in his making. You are the tended one, brought into a world made ready. The book loves patterns like this. It loves to show you that the shape of the beginning is echoed in the shape of the family. The time folds back on itself, that nothing is random. And then comes the 7th day, and on the 7th day, God rested. But in Jubilees, this is not merely God growing quiet. It is the birth of the Sabbath, the first holy rest, and the book says the highest angels kept it in heaven before it was ever kept on earth. Imagine that, a rest so sacred that even the angels of the presence, the shining ones who stand before the very face of God, paused their endless service to keep it. Rest was not invented for the weak. It was kept first by the strongest and brightest beings in all of creation, because rest is not a concession to weakness. It is a holy thing, worthy of the highest in heaven. Rest, in this telling, is not the absence of work. It is a gift, sanctified and set apart, woven into the very first week of creation. Before there was sin, before there was toil, before there was any weariness at all, there was already rest, waiting. I want you to hear that, wherever you are lying tonight. Rest was not an afterthought. Rest was not something God invented later because his creatures grew tired. Rest was built into the world on the 7th morning, blessed and made holy, before anyone needed it. Your longing to lie down, to stop, to be still, that longing is not weakness. It is memory. It is the shape of the seventh day, still living inside you, calling you home. So breathe and rest here for a moment in that first Sabbath. And in the next chapter, we will step into the garden that God planted, and we will meet the first man and the first woman, and we will learn what Jubilees says about the years they walked in Eden, and the strange and gentle counting of their days. Sleep is close. Let us keep walking slowly. Chapter 3. The Garden and the Slow Years of Eden. What was it like to walk with God in the cool of the day before anything was broken? This is the question the Book of Jubilees carries us into now, and it answers it more slowly, more tenderly than the Book of Genesis ever does. You know the outline of the story. God plants a garden in the east, in a place called Eden, and there he sets the man he has formed from the dust. The garden is full of trees that are pleasant to look at and good for food. A river runs through it, and in the middle stand two trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And God gives the man a single boundary. You may eat from every tree, but not from that one. On the day you eat of it, you will surely die. Jubilees tells this story, but it tells it wrapped in numbers, because to this book the timing of holy things is itself a kind of scripture. It says that Adam was formed and brought into the garden after a set number of days. It says the animals were brought to him to be named, and that he named them, giving voice for the first time to the creatures of the earth. And it says that Adam lived in the garden, alone, and then with the woman God made from his side, for 7 full years before anything went wrong. 7 years. Sit with that. In the Book of Jubilees, there is a long, unhurried season of peace at the beginning of the human story. 7 years of tending the garden. 7 years of walking with God in the evenings. 7 years of naming and knowing and being at home in the world without shame and without fear. The book does not rush past the good years to get to the fall. It lets them stand. It lets the light linger. Breathe slowly here. Let that settle into the quiet. Before the sorrow, there were years of simple peace. And why does Jubilees care so much about the exact counting of these days? Because this is the book of the division of the days, and it believes that the events of Eden set a pattern for holiness that echoes down through all of time. The very first things that happen, the making, the naming, the entering of the garden, even the leaving of it, are all placed with care upon the calendar. In Jubilees, when something matters to God, it happens at an appointed time. Nothing sacred is left to chance. Nothing holy is scattered at random across the year. There is a comfort hidden in this that I do not want you to miss tonight. If you have ever felt that your life is a jumble of unconnected days, one thing after another, no rhythm, no meaning, just the grinding turn of the calendar, then hear what this ancient book insists upon. Time is not chaos. Time has a shape. There are appointed seasons, and they come around, and they carry mercy in them. The garden had its years, the rest had its day, and the God who set the sun and moon in the sky as timekeepers did not forget to write mercy into the schedule. The book tells us, too, of the tenderness of those first days. It speaks of Adam offering a fragrant offering in the morning, of the animals in those early years living at peace, of a single language spoken by every living thing, so that man and beast understood one another. It is a vision of a world without the great loneliness that would come later, a world where nothing was cut off, nothing was estranged, nothing was truly alone. Let yourself walk in that garden for a moment before we leave it. Feel the softness of the ground under bare feet, the warmth of a sun that never burned, the coolness of the evening breeze that carried, the old stories say, the very voice of God moving among the trees. Picture the fruit heavy on the branches, the water running clear and bright, the creatures unafraid, coming close, resting nearby. Imagine a whole world in which no one had ever been ashamed, in which no one had ever been lied to, in which no one had ever been left. That is the peace the book remembers at the beginning of everything, a peace so deep and so ordinary that the man and the woman did not even know to be grateful for it, because they had never known anything else. Rest here, in that garden, for one long breath. Let its quiet be your quiet tonight, because even though the gates would close, the book does not want you to forget that the peace was real. It was not a dream. It happened. There was a world of unbroken belonging, and its memory is written into you, and its restoration is promised at the far end of the story. The longing you feel some nights, for a home you can't quite name, for a peace that always seems just out of reach, is not foolishness. It is the memory of Eden and the promise of it, alive in you still. And then, gently, the book turns toward the sorrow. It tells of the serpent, of the fruit taken and eaten, of the eyes opened to shame, of the leaves sewn together to cover what could not be covered, and it tells of the animals falling silent, of that single shared language being taken away, so that from that day the creatures of the earth no longer spoke as they once had. There is a strange grief in that detail. The fall in Jubilees is not only a loss of innocence, it is a loss of understanding. It is the moment the world went quiet in a way it had never been quiet before. Sit with that image for a moment, because it is one of the most haunting in the whole book. Before, the man had spoken with the animals, and they had answered. The whole living world had been one great conversation. Every creature understood, no one shut out, no one alone in a language of their own. And then, in a single day, the conversation ended. The creatures fell silent. From that day, the world was full of things that could no longer be understood. A silence where there had once been speech, a distance where there had once been closeness. The loneliness that so many of us feel, that sense of being surrounded by life and yet somehow unheard, somehow unable to make ourselves understood. The Book of Jubilees traces it all the way back to that moment at the garden gate, when the shared language was taken away. Breathe here and let that ancient grief be named gently. If you have felt that silence, the ache of being close to others and still feeling unheard, you're not imagining it, and you are not alone in it. It is one of the oldest wounds in the world. But remember what we said. The story does not end at the gate. And at the far end of it, in the great restoration the book looks toward, the silence is undone, the distance is closed, and God himself comes near enough that no one is unheard ever again. But even here, even as the gates of the garden close, the book does not leave the man and woman utterly abandoned. God clothes them. God provides for them. And the counting of the days goes on, because the story is not over. It is only beginning its long road home. I want to say something to you directly now, before we close this chapter. If tonight you are carrying the memory of a garden you feel you have lost, a season of peace, a relationship, a version of yourself that felt whole, a time before the wait came, then let this ancient book be gentle with you. It does not pretend the loss was small. It grieves it honestly. But it also insists that the story did not end at the garden gate. It insists that the God who walked in Eden went out with them into the thorns and did not stop walking. You are not left at the gate. You are not shut out forever. The road keeps going, and you are still on it, and you are not alone on it. Rest here for a moment, breathe. And in the next chapter, the world outside the garden will grow, and the generations will multiply, and we will meet a man named Enoch, and behind him a mystery beginning to gather in the days of his father, the first shadow of the strange and terrible story of the angels who came down. Sleep is drawing nearer. Let us walk on softly. Chapter 4. The days of Jared and the angels who came down. Have you ever watched something good turn slowly, so gradually you could not name the moment it changed? That is the story the Book of Jubilees begins to tell us now. The story of how the light that came down from heaven became, over long years, a darkness upon the earth. After the garden, the generations unfold. Adam and Eve have children, and their children have children, and the number of the people upon the earth grows. Jubilees, faithful to its love of counting, walks us down this line of names: Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared. And it pauses, as the older scriptures also pause, on a name that breaks the pattern. Enoch. We are told that Enoch walked with God, and that he was the first among men to learn writing and knowledge and wisdom, and that he wrote down the signs of the heavens and the order of the months, so that the sons of men might know the seasons of the years. In the Book of Jubilees, Enoch is the great keeper of the calendar, the one who first understood the counting of time as a holy thing. Picture him, a man who studied the movements of the sun and the moon and the stars, not out of idle curiosity, but because he understood that the ordering of time was a sacred trust. He learned the pattern of the months, the turning of the seasons, the rhythm woven into the heavens, and he wrote it all down so that those who came after him would not lose the count. In a generation beginning to slide into darkness, Enoch was the one keeping careful watch over the shape of the holy year, guarding the rhythm the way a man might guard a flame in the wind. He is a witness, the book says, against the wickedness that was rising. And later, we are told, God took him and set him in a Garden of Eden in honor, where he writes down the judgment of the world. But it is in the generation just before Enoch, in the days of his father Jared, that the shadow begins. And here the Book of Jubilees tells one of the strangest and oldest stories in all of ancient literature. It says that in the days of Jared, certain angels of God, the book calls them the Watchers, came down onto the earth. And here is the part that surprises many people who hear it for the first time. According to Jubilees, they did not come down to do evil. They came down for a good reason. They were sent, the book says, to teach the children of men to do what is just and right upon the earth. They came as instructors. They came to help. They came at first in obedience. Let that land softly. The great disaster of this ancient story does not begin with rebellion. It begins with a good errand that went wrong. Breathe here. Let that settle. Think about how quietly a thing like that would have happened. Not in a single dramatic moment of rebellion, but slowly, across years, the way most good things are lost. First the errand. Come down, teach the people what is right and just. Then the staying, lingering longer than they were sent to linger, growing at home in a world that was never meant to be their home. Then the looking and the wanting and the small compromises that felt like nothing at the time. And then one day a line had been crossed that could not be uncrossed, and the ones who had come as teachers of righteousness had become the source of the world's corruption, and none of them could quite say when it happened. Breathe here for a moment, because there is a hard mercy in that. The book is honest about how goodness gets lost, gradually, almost invisibly, one small drift at a time. For the Watchers having come down, looked upon the daughters of men, and saw that they were beautiful. And slowly, over years, the ones who had come to teach righteousness were themselves drawn away from it. They took wives from among the daughters of men. And from those unions, the book says, came a race of giants upon the earth, enormous, violent beings, the offspring of heaven and earth mingled in a way that was never meant to be. And the earth began to fill with violence, and with corruption, and with a wickedness that spread like a stain across the whole world. Now I want to be honest with you here in the quiet, because this is one of the places where thoughtful people of genuine faith have long disagreed. Some read this story as literal history, actual angels, actual giants, an actual corruption of the world. Others read it as a way the ancient world tried to explain the mystery of evil, the sense that something had gone wrong at a level far above human choosing. The book of Genesis itself mentions the sons of God and the daughters of men and the giants of old in only a handful of haunting verses, and then falls silent. It is Jubilees and its sister book of Enoch that fill in the terrible detail. These are real and ongoing conversations among people who love the scriptures. You do not have to settle them tonight. You only have to let the story do what stories do, to name, in the language of angels and giants, a truth we all know in our bones, that good things can be corrupted, that the highest gifts can be turned, that the world we live in is not the world as it was meant to be. And yet, hold on to this, even in the darkest turn of this story, the Book of Jubilees does not lose sight of mercy. For in the same generation, Enoch is walking with God. In the same generation, a witness is writing down the truth. Even as the watchers fall, a keeper of the light is rising. The darkness is real, but it is never the whole picture. There is always, somewhere in the frame, a man walking with God. And that is what I want to leave you with tonight as your breathing slows. In every generation, including this one, including yours, there is both the shadow and the witness. There is what has gone wrong, and there is the quiet one who still walks with God through the middle of it. You may feel some nights that the shadow is winning, but the book insists there is always a witness. There is always someone keeping the light, and on this night perhaps listening in the dark, that someone is you. You are not swallowed by the shadow. You are not defined by what has gone wrong around you. You are seen, you are known. Rest now, breathe deeply. In the next chapter, the corruption of the earth will reach its height, and the great decision of heaven will draw near, the days of Noah and the flood, and the terrible cleansing of the world. Let us walk on, slowly, toward the water. Chapter 5. The Flood and the Grief of Heaven. What does God feel when he looks upon a world gone wrong? Not what does he decide, but what does he feel? The Book of Jubilees, in its telling of the flood, dares to answer that question, and the answer is not what many people expect. It is not rage, it is grief. By now the story has grown dark. The watchers have fallen. The giants walk the earth, devouring and destroying. The book says the corruption has spread into every living thing, that violence fills the land, that the whole imagination of the human heart has bent toward evil continually. It is a world coming apart at the seams, and heaven watching is moved, not to fury, but to sorrow. The book echoes the ancient line from Genesis, that God was grieved in his heart, that it repented him that he had made humankind. There is a wound in the sky. The Maker is broken-hearted over what the making has become. Rest here for a moment, and let that image be gentle with you. Whatever else this story is, it begins in a God who is not indifferent, a God who feels the ruin of the world as a grief. That is not a small thing to know on a dark night. You are not being watched by a cold and distant eye. You are held in the gaze of one who can be grieved. And a heart that can grieve is a heart that can love. But in the midst of the ruin, the book turns our eyes to a single man, Noah. The Book of Jubilees tells us that Noah was righteous in his generation, that he walked with God as his ancestor Enoch had walked, that he was blameless in a world that had forgotten what blamelessness even meant. And God, in his grief, resolves to begin again, not to erase but to preserve, to carry a remnant through the waters, to save a seed of the world so that the story would not end in the mud. And so comes the ark. You know the shape of it. The great vessel of wood, sealed with pitch inside and out. The gathering of the animals, 2 by 2 and 7 by 7 of the clean, brought in from every corner of the earth. Noah and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives. 8 souls, the whole future of humanity, sealed into a wooden box while the sky broke open. Jubilees, ever the counter of days, tells us the very dates. It tells us the month and the day the waters came, and the month and the day they began to fall, and the month and the day the ark came to rest at last upon the mountains. To this book, even the flood keeps a calendar. Even the judgment has its appointed times. Breathe deeply. Let the sound of that ancient rain settle into the quiet. 40 days and 40 nights of it, the windows of heaven opened and the fountains of the deep broken up, the whole world going grey and grey and grey beneath the water. Imagine being inside the ark through those long days, the creak of the great timbers, the steady drumming of the rain on the roof above, hour after hour, day after day, never stopping, the smell of the animals and the straw and the pitch, the dim light. And through it all, Noah and his family, held in a wooden box in the middle of a drowned world, unable to see land, unable to see sky, able only to trust that the one who had shut the door behind them would open it again when the time was right. They could not steer the ark. It had no sail, no rudder, no oars. They could only be carried. All they could do was wait and trust and be borne up by the very waters that were destroying everything else. Rest here a moment with that image, because I think it is a picture of some seasons of a life. There are times when you cannot steer, cannot fix, cannot see the way ahead. Times when all you can do is stay inside whatever fragile ark is holding you, and trust that you are being carried and wait for the door to open. If that is where you are tonight, hear the old story gently. The ark had no rudder, and it was enough. Noah could not steer, and he arrived. You do not have to steer tonight either. You only have to let yourself be carried. The one who shut the door is watching the waters, and he will open it again at the right time. And then, this is the part I want you to hold on to tonight. The rain stops. The waters begin to sink. A wind passes over the face of the deep, and the earth begins to dry. And Noah sends out a bird, and it returns, finding no place to rest, and he waits, and he sends it out again. And the second time, it comes back with a leaf in its beak, a green and living leaf, plucked from a tree that had survived beneath the flood. And Noah knows the world is being given back. There is a whole gospel hidden in that single leaf. After all the water, after all the ruin, after the long grey days when it seemed nothing green could ever grow again, a leaf. A small, living, impossible sign that the world was not over, that the ground was rising again, that mercy had outlasted the flood. The Book of Jubilees, like the Book of Genesis before it, will not let the story end in water. It ends in a leaf, and then in a rainbow, and then in a promise. For when Noah comes out onto the dry ground, he builds an altar and he makes an offering. And the book tells us that God smells the pleasing offering and makes a covenant. Never again will the waters cover the whole earth. And he sets the rainbow in the clouds as the sign of it, a bow hung up in the sky, a weapon of war turned into a promise of peace. Sit with that image for a moment, because it is one of the tenderest in all of Scripture. A bow is a weapon. It is drawn to send an arrow. But this bow is hung up in the clouds, unstrung, pointing away from the earth laid down. It is the picture of a God setting down his weapon, of judgment giving way to promise, of the storm itself made to carry a covenant of peace. Every time the rain clears and the colors arch across the sky, it is meant to be a reminder written in light. Never again, the waters will not have the last word. As long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. The rhythm of time itself is restored and blessed and made a covenant. The calendar you see comes back, the appointed seasons return. Even after the flood, the God of Jubilees rebuilds the shape of time and writes his mercy into it. Now hear me speak to you directly. Perhaps there has been a flood in your own life. Perhaps there has been a season when the waters rose and rose, and it seemed as though everything you loved was going under, and you shut yourself into some small ark of survival and just tried to stay afloat while the world went grey. If that is you, or if that has been you, then let the Book of Jubilees say this over you tonight. The rain stops, the waters sink, the leaf comes back. And the God who grieved over the ruin is the same God who sets the bow in the clouds and says, never again, I have not forgotten you. The rhythm of your life will return. You are not still drowning, even if it feels that way. You are being carried through, and there is a leaf coming. There is dry ground coming. There is a covenant older than your sorrow, and it says the seasons will not cease. Rest now, breathe slowly, let your shoulders drop. And in the next chapter we will follow what happened after the flood, when the evil spirits of the dead giants troubled the sons of Noah, and Noah cried out to heaven. And a strange bargain was struck that the Book of Jubilees says still shapes the world we live in tonight. Sleep is near. Let us go on softly into the after of the flood. Chapter 6. The bargain of Mastema and the prayer of Noah. Why is there still trouble in the world if the flood washed the wickedness away? It is an honest question, and it is one the Book of Jubilees answers with a strange and haunting story. A story about a prayer and a prince of spirits and a bargain made in the aftermath of the flood. When the waters had gone down and Noah and his family had come out onto the clean, washed earth, they must have believed the darkness was over. The giants were gone, drowned beneath the flood. The corruption was cleansed. The world had been given a second beginning. But the Book of Jubilees tells us that the trouble was not entirely finished. For when the giants died in the flood, their bodies perished, but their spirits did not go down into the water with them. Their spirits remained. Unclean spirits, the book calls them, wandering the earth, and they began to trouble the children of Noah, to lead them astray, to make them sick, to whisper them toward ruin. And at the head of these spirits the book names a figure. It calls him Mastema, a name that means something like hostility or accusation or opposition. He is a kind of adversary, a Satan figure, the chief of the spirits that afflict humankind. And he does not want to let the sons of men go free. Breathe here for a moment. This is an old and shadowed part of the story, but stay with me because the light is coming. For Noah, watching his grandchildren fall ill and go astray, does the only thing a righteous man can do. he prays. The Book of Jubilees gives us his prayer, and it is one of the most moving moments in the whole book. He cries out to God on behalf of his descendants. He asks that the good God would have mercy on the children of his sons, and would not let the unclean spirits rule over them, and would shut them away, and would heal the sickness they had brought into the world. It is the prayer of a grandfather for his grandchildren. It is the prayer of a man who has already survived one flood and cannot bear to watch a new darkness swallow the ones he loves. And there is something deeply worth resting in here, in the shape of that prayer. Noah does not pray for himself. He has already been saved. He has already come through the water. He prays for the ones who come after him, for children he will not live to see grow old, for a future he will not walk into. He stands at the edge of his own life and lifts up the generations that will follow, and he asks God to protect them when he no longer can. That is one of the most selfless prayers in all of Scripture, and the Book of Jubilees preserves it tenderly. Breathe here a moment, because maybe there are people you carry like that. Children or grandchildren, or those you love who will go on into a world you worry about, a world you cannot always protect them from. If you have ever lain awake at night, praying for someone else's future, someone you cannot follow all the way, then Noah has prayed your prayer before you. And the God who heard him hears you. Your love for the ones who come after you rises the way Noah's rose, and it is not wasted, and it is not unheard. And heaven hears him. The book tells us that God commands that the evil spirits be bound, all of them, and shut away, so that they could no longer trouble the sons of Noah. And there would have been an end of it entirely, except that Mastema, the prince of the spirits, comes before God and pleads. He asks that not all of the spirits be bound. He asks that a portion be left to him, the book says 1/10, so that his purpose might continue, so that there might still be a testing in the world. And mysteriously God permits it. 9 parts out of 10 are bound and shut away, but 1 part in 10 is left to roam. Now I know how strange that is to hear, and I want to be careful and honest with you the way this book deserves. This is a mythic and symbolic answer to one of the deepest questions human beings have ever asked. Why, if God is good, is there still evil in the world? Why did the flood not fix everything? And Jubilees answers, in the language of spirits and bargains, that the world we live in is a world where a testing remains, where not everything harmful has yet been shut away, where the righteous still have to pray and resist and cry out and cling to God, because the story is not yet finished and the last binding has not yet come. Thoughtful people of faith read a passage like this in many ways, and that is right and good. You do not need to resolve it tonight. You only need to hear its strange comfort, and there is a comfort here, hidden in the shadow. For in the very same story where Mastema is granted his 10th, the book tells us that God does not leave humankind defenseless. He commands his good angels to teach Noah the medicines, the healing properties of the herbs and the roots and the trees of the earth, so that the sons of men would have a way to fight the sicknesses the spirits brought. The Book of Jubilees says that Noah wrote all of this down in a book and gave it to his son. So even as 1/10 of the darkness is left to roam, heaven hands humankind the means of healing. The medicine is given at the same moment as the wound. Think of what that picture is really saying. The angels are commanded to teach Noah which plants heal, which roots soothe, which leaves and barks and seeds carry within them the power to mend a fevered body. In the imagination of this ancient book, the very fields and forests of the earth were seeded with mercy, the cure growing quietly alongside the ailment, the remedy hidden in the same soil as the trouble. Wherever there was a sickness, somewhere there was also a plant that could heal it, if only you knew where to look. And heaven made sure that humankind was not left to look alone. The knowledge was given, the medicine was written down. Let that settle into the quiet, because it is a gentle way of saying something you may need to hear tonight. You do not live in a world where only the wounds are real and the healing is a rumor. You live in a world where the healing is woven in right beside the hurt, where mercy grows in the same field as the trouble, where the God who allowed the testing also planted the cure. If you are hurting tonight, the healing is not far away in some other world. It is near, it grows close by, it was placed here for you. Let that settle into the quiet. You live in a world where a testing remains, but you also live in a world where healing has been given, where the herbs of the field carry mercy in them, where the good angels were commanded to teach us how to mend what is broken. The darkness was not left to have its way unopposed. The medicine was written down. And so I want to say to you, wherever you are lying in the dark, if there is a testing in your life right now, some trouble that survived your own flood, some old spirit of fear or grief or shame that still whispers to you at night, then hear the story. You are not the first to face it. Noah faced it, and Noah prayed, and heaven heard him, and heaven bound 9 parts of the darkness and gave the medicine for the 10th. Your prayer tonight is not a small thing. It rises the way Noah's rose, and the God who answered him is not deaf to you. You are not left to face the testing alone. You are held, you are loved, you are safe. The medicine has been given, and the last binding is still coming. Rest now. Breathe deeply, and let the shadow pass. In the next chapter, we will rise up out of these dark early days and into the heart of what makes the Book of Jubilees so strange and so treasured. The secret calendar of the heavens, the counting of the days that the book believes the whole world had forgotten. Sleep is drawing close. Let us climb up now toward the light of the sun and the moon and the stars. Chapter 7. The secret calendar of the heavens. What if the very way you count your days was quietly out of step with heaven, and no one ever told you? This is the heart of the mystery that made the Book of Jubilees both treasured and dangerous. This is the secret at the center of the book. It is a calendar the book believes was given from heaven and lost by the earth. Do you remember from the 2nd chapter how carefully Jubilees told us that God set the sun and the moon and the stars in the sky on the 4th day? Not only to give light, but to be the great timekeepers of the world, to mark the days and the weeks and the appointed seasons. That was not a passing detail. That was the seed of everything. Because the Book of Jubilees believes with all its heart that God gave humankind a perfect calendar, written into the order of the heavens, and that to keep it is to walk in step with the sacred rhythm of creation itself. And here is the number at the center of it all, 364. The Book of Jubilees insists that the true year of God is 364 days long. Not 365, not the shifting, uneven count of the moon. 364, exactly. And do you know why that number is so beautiful to this book? Because 364 divides perfectly into weeks. 52 weeks exactly, with nothing left over. 4 seasons of 91 days each. A year that never breaks the rhythm of the 7-day week. A year where every date falls on the same day of the week, every single year, forever. A year where the Sabbath is never displaced. A calendar of perfect unbroken order. Breathe here. Let that settle into the quiet. A year that never loses its rhythm. Imagine how that must have felt to the people who loved this book. The sense of a time so ordered, so faithful, so perfectly woven, that no holy day could ever wander, no feast could ever fall on the wrong day, no rest could ever be misplaced. And this is where the book grows urgent, even a little afraid, because it warns again and again that the children of men will forget this calendar, that they will follow the moon instead of the sun, and that the moon, wandering and uneven, will pull the feasts out of their places and disorder the holy times. The book pleads with its readers not to lose the count. It puts the warning in the mouth of the angel, and in the mouth of Enoch, and in the record of Noah. Keep the reckoning. Do not forget the number. Do not let the appointed times slip. To the Book of Jubilees, a people who lose their calendar are a people who have lost their footing in sacred time. They will keep the feasts, but on the wrong days. They will think they are in step with heaven when they have quietly drifted out of it. And notice what this ordered year was for. It was not merely a way of counting. It was a way of never missing the appointed times of joy. In the calendar the book loves, there were seasons of feasting set like jewels through the year, times to remember, times to give thanks, times to gather and rejoice and rest. The whole point of keeping the reckoning was so that the people would arrive at these appointed times together on the right day, in step with heaven, and would not miss a single one. To lose the calendar was not only to lose track of the dates, it was to risk arriving late to your own joy. It was to risk sleeping through the feast. Breathe here a moment, and let that image be gentle with you. A calendar whose whole purpose was to make sure you never missed the appointed times of gladness. This is one of the great reasons the book was so treasured by the community that hid the Dead Sea Scrolls, and one of the reasons it caused such tension, for they too believed in this solar calendar of 364 days, and they believed the temple in Jerusalem had gone astray by following a different reckoning. The calendar was not a small matter of dates to them. It was the difference between walking in step with heaven and walking out of step with it. Scholars still study these ancient calendar disputes with fascination, because they show us how deeply, how passionately our ancestors cared about the ordering of time. These were real and ongoing conversations among people of genuine and burning faith. Now let me pull this all the way home to you, lying here in the dark. Because I think this old, strange obsession with the calendar is speaking to something you feel more than you know. You live by a calendar too. Everyone does. But so many of us live by a calendar that has drifted badly out of step with anything holy. A calendar with no true Sabbath in it. A calendar where the days blur into one another, where the rest never quite arrives, where the appointed times of joy and worship and stillness have been crowded out by deadlines and demands and the endless low hum of things undone. Many of us are keeping a broken calendar without even knowing it, a reckoning of days that has quietly lost its rhythm, so that we are always a little off, always a little behind, always a little out of step with the deep music we were made for. The Book of Jubilees looks across 3,000 years and says something to you tonight. It says the rhythm can be recovered. Sacred time is not gone. There is still a Sabbath waiting in the week, a rest built into the order of things, an appointed stillness that was set in the heavens on the fourth day and has never been taken away. You have not missed it forever. You are not permanently out of step. The calendar of grace is still turning, and there is a place in it for you, and it comes around and it comes around again. And here is the gentlest truth of all. You do not recover the lost rhythm by trying harder to keep time. You do not find your way back into sacred time by adding one more task to an already crowded calendar. You recover it by stopping, by resting, by letting yourself, for once, fall still and let the deep rhythm of creation carry you instead of straining to keep up with the shallow, frantic rhythm of the world. The lost calendar is not recovered by effort. It is recovered by rest. That is why this night, this stillness, this letting go is itself the beginning of the recovery. So even now, in this quiet, you are stepping back into a holy rhythm. The stillness you are sinking into tonight is not nothing. It is a small recovery of the lost calendar. It is a returning to the count. It is a night that falls, for once on the right day. Rest here for a long moment. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders drop, and let the rhythm return. And in the next chapter we will come at last to the deepest word in the whole book, the word that gives it its very name, Jubilee. And you will learn what it truly means, and why it may be the most hopeful word ever written into a calendar. Sleep is very close now. Let us go gently on, toward the meaning of it all. Chapter 8. The Meaning of Jubilee. There is one word this whole book is named for, and we have finally arrived at it. Jubilee. Say it slowly in your mind. Jubilee. It is one of the most beautiful and most hopeful ideas ever written down by human hands, and tonight it belongs to you. To understand it, we have to understand how the Book of Jubilees counts time, because the counting is the meaning. The book does not measure history in ordinary years. It measures it in weeks of years and in jubilees. A week of years is 7 years, and a jubilee is 7 weeks of years. 7 times 7, 49 years, and then the year that follows, the 50th, is the jubilee year itself. The whole book is structured this way, laying out the history of the world from creation to Sinai across a great sweep of these jubilee periods, so that every event has its place in a vast and ordered rhythm of 7s and 50s. But where does this idea come from, and why does it matter so much? It comes from an ancient law, one of the most extraordinary laws ever given to any people. In the older scriptures, in the book of Leviticus, God commands his people to keep a Sabbath not only of days, but of years. Every 7th year, the land itself was to rest. No sowing, no reaping, the fields left fallow, the soil allowed to breathe. And then, after 7 of these Sabbaths of years, in the 50th year came the Jubilee. And on the Jubilee, the trumpet was sounded across the whole land, and something almost unbelievable happened. Liberty was proclaimed. Debts were released. Those who had fallen into slavery were set free. Land that had been lost or sold in hard times returned to the families who had first been given it. Everyone who had drifted away came home. It was, in a single year, a great undoing of all the accumulated weight of loss and debt and bondage that builds up over a lifetime. A reset written into the very structure of time. A day when the trumpet sounds and the scales are wiped clean and everyone goes home. Rest here for a long, long moment and let the weight of that reach you. Let it settle all the way down into the quiet, because this is the deepest word in the book, and it is speaking directly to you. The whole aching structure of the world, in the vision of Jubilees, is not built to trap you forever in what you owe. It is built with a release inside of it. It is built with an appointed year of homecoming. The God who set the sun and moon in the sky to keep time did not only measure out the days, he measured out mercy. He built forgiveness into the calendar. He wrote freedom into the shape of the years. He decided before the foundation of the world that no debt would be carried without end, that no bondage would be permanent, that there would always be a jubilee coming. Breathe deeply. You are held. You are loved. You are safe. Imagine the day itself. Imagine standing in a field in the ancient world in the 50th year and hearing it begin. The long, low call of the ram's horn, the trumpet sounded across the whole land, from village to village, hill to hill, until every corner of the country had heard it. And with that sound, everything changed. The one who had lost the family field looked up, because it was coming back to him. The one who had sold himself into service to pay a debt set down his tools, because he was free now and could go home. The one who had drifted far away, cut off from everything he had once belonged to, turned his face toward the road, because the road was open again. In a single day, at the sound of a single horn, the accumulated weight of years and years of loss was simply lifted. Debts forgiven, bondage ended, everyone home. Breathe here, and let the sound of that trumpet reach you across 3,000 years. Let that settle all the way down into the quiet. A horn that means it is over now. Come home. Think of what this must have meant to a poor family in the ancient world. Perhaps they had fallen on hard years. Perhaps they had sold their land to survive, or sold themselves into service to pay what they owed. In any ordinary system, that loss would be final. The poor grow poorer, the debt compounds, the bondage passes down to the children, and there is no way out. But into that iron machinery of loss, the Jubilee cut like a trumpet blast. Hold on, the law said, hold on. In the 50th year, the land comes back. The debt is released. You go home. It is not forever. It was never forever, and this, I believe, is why the Book of Jubilees measures all of history in Jubilees, because it wants you to see the whole story of the world through this one hope-shaped lens. It wants you to understand that time itself is bending toward release, that the deepest logic written into the calendar of God is not accumulation, but liberation, not debt, but homecoming. Not the long, slow, crushing weight of what is owed, but the trumpet and the freedom and the road home. Now I want to speak to you as gently and as directly as I know how, because I think you may be carrying a debt tonight that has nothing to do with money. Perhaps it is a debt of guilt, the things you did, the things you left undone, the way you failed someone you loved. Perhaps it is a debt of grief, or of shame, or of 1,000 small failures that have compounded over the years until the weight of them feels like a burden you will carry to your grave. Perhaps you have quietly believed that you are a person who owes and owes and owes and can never be free. There is a particular kind of tiredness that comes from owing, not the clean tiredness of good work, the kind that a night's sleep can mend, but a deeper, heavier weariness, the weariness of feeling that you are always a little in the wrong, always a little behind, always needing to make up for something you can never quite make up for. It is the tiredness of the debtor, and so many of us carry it without ever naming it. We move through our days with a quiet ledger running in the back of our minds, tallying our failures, adding up the ways we have fallen short, never quite letting ourselves rest because the account is never quite settled. If that is a weight you know, then you know exactly the kind of burden the Jubilee was made to lift. Hear the trumpet then. Hear the word this book is named for, Jubilee. There is a release built into the deep structure of things. The debt you carry was never meant to be carried forever. There is a 50th year. There is a homecoming appointed for you. There is a God who wrote into the calendar of the world before you were ever born that you would not be lost, and you would not be enslaved to what you owe, and you would come home. The scales can be wiped clean. The land can come back. You can go home. And notice how the Jubilee comes. It does not come because the debtor finally pays off what he owes. That is the whole point of it. He could never pay it off. That is why he lost the land. That is why he fell into service in the first place. The Jubilee does not wait for him to earn his freedom. It comes because the appointed year has come. It comes as a gift from outside, dropped into his life at the sound of a horn, entirely apart from anything he could do to deserve it. That is the tenderness of it. The release does not depend on your strength or your goodness or your ability to finally get it right. It depends only on the faithfulness of the God who appointed it, and he is faithful, and the year has come. You are not defined by your debt. You are not a prisoner of what you owe. There is a Jubilee coming. There is a Jubilee, perhaps, beginning quietly tonight in this bed, in this dark, in this stillness, as the weight begins at last to lift. You are held. You are loved. You are safe. Rest now. Breathe. Let the trumpet sound softly in the distance, and let the burden go. And in the next chapter, we will step back for a moment from the visions and ask a very different kind of question. How do we even know this book? Where did it come from, and how, against all odds, did it survive? Sleep is so close now. Let us walk on quietly toward the story of the book itself. Chapter 9. How we came to hold this book again. Where does a book like this come from? How does a scroll written more than 2,000 years ago end up whispered into your ears tonight in the dark, in a language its first author never spoke? This is the story of the book itself, and it is nearly as remarkable as the visions inside it. Let us begin with what scholars can tell us. The Book of Jubilees was almost certainly written down in Hebrew, somewhere around the 2nd century before Christ. That is a long time ago. It means these words were being copied and read, while the Maccabees were fighting for the freedom of Jerusalem, while the great library of Alexandria still stood, generations before a young woman in Nazareth would be visited by an angel. This was a living, treasured book in the world, into which Jesus would one day be born. It was not some late invention. It was ancient already when the New Testament was young. For a long time, though, the full book was thought to be lost to the Western world. It was known only from scattered quotations, hints in the writings of early church fathers, who mentioned the little Genesis and its strange details, fragments preserved in Latin and in other tongues, references without a hole. The complete book had slipped out of the Bibles and the libraries of Europe, and for many centuries almost no one in the West had read it entire. It became a rumor of a book, a title without a text. Breathe here for a moment. Let that settle. A book, ancient and treasured, gone quiet for 1,000 years and more. But it had not truly died, because far to the south, in the highlands of Ethiopia, the church there had never let it go. In the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, the Book of Jubilees was never lesser and never little. It was scripture. They called it Kufale, and they copied it faithfully, generation after generation, in their ancient sacred language of Ge'ez, keeping it safe in the stone monasteries and the mountain churches where so many other lost books were also quietly preserved. While the West forgot, Ethiopia remembered. The same highlands that kept the fuller Book of Enoch alive kept Jubilees alive beside it. And so the whole book survived, unbroken, in a language and a land that the scholars of Europe had long overlooked. And then, in the 1800s, the West began to find it again. Ethiopic manuscripts of the book made their way to Europe, and a German scholar named August Dillmann, a patient and brilliant student of the Ge'ez language, translated the whole of it. so that for the first time in many centuries, readers in the West could hold the complete Book of Jubilees in their hands. Later, other scholars followed. An English scholar named R.H. Charles produced a careful edition and translation near the end of that century that brought the book to a wide audience of readers hungry for these ancient words. The rumor of a book had become once more a book you could open and read. But the most astonishing confirmation was still to come, and it came in a way no one could have planned. In the year 1947, in the desert above the Dead Sea, near a place called Qumran, a young shepherd threw a stone into the mouth of a cave and heard something shatter. He climbed up and found clay jars, and inside them ancient scrolls that had lain untouched for nearly 2,000 years. These were the Dead Sea Scrolls, one of the greatest manuscript discoveries in all of human history. And as scholars sorted through the thousands of fragments that eventually emerged from those caves, they found something remarkable. They found the Book of Jubilees, not in Ge'ez, not in Latin, but in Hebrew, pieces of the original language copied out by the very community that had hidden the scrolls more than 2,000 years ago. Let that reach you in the quiet. For centuries, the whole book survived only in the churches of Ethiopia. And then, out of the dust of a desert cave, came fragments of it in its own first language, confirming that this was indeed an ancient and deeply treasured text. Scholars found not just one copy among the scrolls, but pieces of many, one of the most frequently copied books in that whole hidden library. Whoever those people were, they loved this book. They kept it close, they copied it again and again, and they hid it so well that it waited 2,000 years to be found. There is a story often told alongside this one from a little earlier. In the 1770s, a Scottish traveller named James Bruce journeyed deep into Ethiopia in search of the source of the Nile, and when he returned to Europe, he brought back with him ancient manuscripts from those highland churches, among them the long-lost Book of Enoch, the sister book to Jubilees, unread in the West for more than 1,000 years. It caused a quiet sensation among scholars, this rumor of ancient books surviving whole in a distant land, and it opened the door, in the century that followed, for Jubilees to be recovered and translated too. So the two books came back to the wider world, almost together, carried out of the same mountains, kept by the same faithful hands, emerging from the same long silence into the light. Sit for a moment with the sheer patience of that survival. Think of all the hands the book had to pass through to reach you. The scribe 2,000 years ago, dipping his pen, copying line after line by the light of a small lamp, not knowing that his careful work would be sealed in a jar and buried in a cave. The monk in the Ethiopian highlands, centuries later, bent over a manuscript in the cold of a mountain morning, copying the same story so that his community would not lose it. The scholar in the 1800s, learning an ancient and difficult language letter by letter, so that words silent in the West for 1,000 years could be spoken again. And the shepherd boy in 1947, throwing a stone into a dark cave and hearing pottery break. None of them knew about you. None of them could have imagined this night, or this room, or the sound of these words in your ears as you drift towards sleep. And yet every one of them, in their own way, was keeping this book for you. Breathe here, and let that faithfulness settle into the quiet. So many quiet hands, across so many centuries, keeping something precious so that it would not be lost. Now, I want to be careful and honest with you here, the way this book deserves, because there is a real conversation to be had. The Book of Jubilees is considered scripture by some Christians, chiefly in the Ethiopian tradition, and it is not part of the Bible for most others. That is a genuine and respectful difference among people of sincere faith. To read Jubilees tonight is not to be told what you must believe. It is to listen to a very old voice, one that shaped how many of our ancestors imagined the beginning of the world, and to let it speak. The honest position is that this is an ancient and important window into the faith of a distant age, treasured by some as sacred and read by others as a precious record of how the ancients understood their God. You are allowed simply to receive it, and to let it do you good, and to hold the questions gently. And here is what I find most moving in the whole strange survival of this book, and what I want to leave with you tonight. It was almost lost. It should have been lost. It slipped out of the great libraries and the official Bibles and went quiet for 1,000 years. And yet, it was not lost. It was kept alive in mountain monasteries by people the wider world was not watching. It was hidden in a desert cave and preserved by the very dryness of the air. And against every reasonable expectation, it survived, until it could be found again, and translated again, and read again, and whispered tonight to you. There is a parable in that for anyone who feels forgotten. Sometimes the most precious things are kept alive in the quietest, most overlooked places. Sometimes what the world sets aside and calls lesser is being faithfully treasured somewhere out of sight. And sometimes what seems lost for a lifetime is only waiting in the dark to be found again at the appointed time. If you have felt overlooked, set aside, forgotten in some mountain monastery or desert cave of a life that no one seems to be watching, then hear the story of this book. Nothing truly precious is ever finally lost. It is only being kept. And it is found again at the right time. You are not forgotten. You are being kept. Rest now. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders drop. And in the next chapter we will return to the visions of the book, and we will follow it to its highest and most hopeful horizon, the promise the Book of Jubilees makes about the end of all things, the great and final Jubilee, toward which the whole story is quietly bending. Sleep is very near. Let us rise gently toward the hope at the end of the book. Chapter 10. The Great Jubilee toward which all things bend. We have walked through the beginning of the world tonight, but every good story is also reaching toward an ending, and the Book of Jubilees, for all its counting of ancient days, keeps lifting its eyes toward a horizon far ahead, toward the day when the long enmity would finally end, and the whole aching creation would be given its great and final Jubilee. Tonight, we will stand at that horizon together. Do you remember the shape of the Jubilee from a few chapters ago? 7 weeks of years, 49, and then the 50th. The trumpet, the release, the debts forgiven, the exiles brought home. Now imagine that idea stretched not across 50 years, but across the whole span of history. Imagine the entire story of the world moving, jubilee by jubilee, toward one last and greatest jubilee of all. A final trumpet, a final release, a final homecoming, when everything that has been lost is at last restored, and everything that has been in bondage is at last set free. This is the hope that glows quietly underneath the whole book. For the Book of Jubilees looks forward, as the prophets did, to a day of healing for the world. It speaks of a time when the days of the children of men would grow long again, when they would live in peace and gladness, when there would be no adversary and no evil one to destroy, when the earth would be cleansed of its corruption, and when God himself would dwell with his people, and they would be his, and he would be theirs, forever. It looks forward to a renewal of all things, a world made new, a creation set right. And more than any of that, it looks forward to nearness, to the closing of the great distance that opened at the garden gate when the shared language was lost and the world went quiet. The deepest hope of the book is not merely a better world. It is a world where God is near again, where the Maker walks once more among the made in the cool of the day, and no one is unheard, and no one is alone, and the long silence is finally, gently, undone. Rest here for a long moment, and let that hope wash over you in the dark. Let it settle all the way down. A day is coming when there is no adversary. A day is coming when the earth is healed. A day is coming when God dwells with his people, and every tear is old and gone. Think of how the whole story we have walked tonight has been leaning toward this. The garden was lost, but a homecoming is promised. The watchers fell and the earth was corrupted, but a cleansing is coming. The flood grieved the heart of heaven, but the bow was set in the clouds as a pledge that mercy would have the last word. 1/10 of the darkness was left to Rome, but the final binding has been promised, when even that last remnant will be shut away, and the world will be free of its testing at last. Every shadow in this book is answered, somewhere down the long calendar, by a jubilee. Every debt in this book is aimed from the very beginning toward release. The whole of history in the vision of Jubilees is a story bending toward homecoming. Breathe deeply. You are held. You are loved. You are safe. And notice gently what kind of ending this is. It is not an ending in fire and terror and the final triumph of the dark. Many people, when they think of the end of the world, imagine only judgment and dread. But the Book of Jubilees, like the best of the ancient hope, points toward something else entirely. It points toward restoration, toward a garden regained, toward long life and peace and gladness, toward a God who does not merely destroy the broken world, but heals it and comes down to live inside it, and makes his home among the very people who once wept outside the gates of Eden. The story that began with a closing gate ends with an open dwelling. The story that began with exile ends with God moving in. The book speaks of it in images of gentleness that are easy to miss if you read too quickly. It imagines a time when the children of men would grow old in peace and gladness, when there would be no sudden sorrow, no plague, no violence, no terror in the night, when people would finish their days quietly, fully, in the company of those they love, and would lie down at the end as one lies down for a good and welcome sleep. It imagines the earth itself made clean, the ground healed of the violence that had stained it, the long enmity between heaven and earth finally over. And at the center of it all, the oldest and deepest hope of every one of these ancient books, that God would dwell with his people, not distant, not hidden in cloud on a far mountain top, but near, at home, among them, forever. Rest here in that a moment. Let it be the last picture in your mind before sleep. A healed earth, a gentle old age, a quiet lying down, and God near at home among his people wiping away every tear. Let that be the horizon you fall asleep beneath tonight. Not fear, not dread, but a great and final jubilee, glowing at the far end of all things, toward which every day is quietly moving, including this one, including this night, including you. Now, let me bring it close, the way I always want to, because you may be lying here weighed down not only by the past, but by dread of the future. The world can feel, some nights, like a story that is only getting darker. The news, the fears, the sense that things are unraveling, the quiet worry about what is coming for you and for the ones you love. If that dread is with you tonight, then let this ancient book stand against it. Let it tell you that the last word of the story is not ruin. The last word is jubilee. The last word is a trumpet of release. The last word is a healed earth and a God who comes to dwell. Whatever comes, it is bending toward homecoming. Whatever comes, there is a jubilee at the end of it. You are not walking toward the dark. You are walking slowly, night by night, toward the light of the final release. And so even now, tonight, in this small stillness, you are one night closer to that great jubilee. Every day that passes is not a day lost. It is a day nearer the trumpet. It is a day nearer home. Rest now. Breathe slowly and let the dread of tomorrow loosen its grip. You are held. You are not walking toward ruin. You are walking toward release. And in the next chapter we will draw the great mystery of this book to its close and answer the question we began with. Why a book so ancient and so treasured was ever set aside and forgotten, and what it means that you get to hear it now. Sleep is at the door. Let us go on softly toward the closing of the circle. Chapter 11. Why the book was set aside and why you hear it now. We began this night with a mystery, a book that claimed to hold the hidden history behind Genesis, a book once treasured and then quietly set aside, called lesser, called little, let slip into the dark. And now, before we turn fully toward you and toward sleep, we must close that circle. Why was such an ancient and treasured book ever set aside? And what does it mean that, against all of it, you are hearing it tonight? The honest answer is that no single dramatic moment made the Book of Jubilees disappear. There was no great burning, no single decree that erased it in a day. What happened was slower and quieter than that, and in some ways sadder. As the centuries passed, the different branches of the faith settled on which books they would carry forward as scripture and which they would set to the side. And in most of the churches of the West, the Book of Jubilees did not make the cut. It was seen as valuable, perhaps as old and interesting, but not as scripture. And so it was not copied as often. It was not read aloud in the great gatherings. It was not passed down in the common Bibles that ordinary people held. And a book that is not copied, not read aloud, not passed down, will fade. Not because anyone hated it, simply because it was let go. Breathe here for a moment. Let that settle. A precious thing does not always vanish in fire. Sometimes it vanishes in neglect. Sometimes it is simply set down and not picked up again for a very long time. I want to be gentle and honest with you about this, because the story we love to tell in the dark is the dramatic one. The burning, the burying, the powerful men in robes conspiring to keep the truth from us. And there were, across the long history of the Church, moments of real suppression and real fear of certain books. Those stories are not entirely invented, but the quieter truth about Jubilees is, in a way, more human and more sobering than any conspiracy. It was not mostly hidden from people. It was mostly just forgotten by them. It fell out of use. It stopped being read aloud. It was crowded out by other books and other concerns, until a whole civilization simply misplaced it, the way you might misplace something precious in your own home. Not by anyone's design, but by the slow accumulation of days in which no one thought to pick it up. Rest here a moment with that, because it carries a warning worth hearing gently. The most precious things are not usually taken from us by force. They are lost by neglect. the friendship no one tended, the faith no one fed, the rest no one kept, the quiet that no one made time for. Guard the precious things, the story seems to whisper, not against some great enemy, but against the simple forgetting of ordinary days. But and this is the heart of the mystery and the answer to the question of the hook. It was not set down everywhere. Do you remember? In the highlands of Ethiopia, the book was never lesser and never little. There it remained scripture. There it was copied faithfully, read aloud, carried down through the generations in the sacred language of Ge'ez, kept alive in the stone churches and the mountain monasteries all through the long centuries when the West had forgotten it. And there, in the desert caves above the Dead Sea, hidden in clay jars, fragments of it in its own first Hebrew waited in the dark for 2,000 years. The book that the West let slip was being held all along by hands the West was not watching, in places the world overlooked. It was called lesser by some. It was treasured as sacred by others. It was set aside in one land and cherished in another. And so it survived, not because it was never let go, but because it was never let go everywhere at once. That is why you can hear it tonight. Not because it was too powerful to suppress, and not because of some grand conspiracy of silence, though those are the stories we love to tell in the dark. The truer and gentler reason is that somewhere, someone kept it. A monk copying by candlelight in an Ethiopian highland. A scribe 2,000 years ago, hiding scrolls in a jar as the armies drew near. A patient scholar in the 1800s bent over a Ge'ez manuscript, working out its words one by one so that the West could read it again. The book reached you across 3,000 years because, at every point where it could have been lost forever, someone quietly refused to let it be lost. It was carried hand to hand to hand, all the way to this night, all the way to you. Let that reach you in the quiet, because there is something in it that I think you need to hear about your own life. You have been carried too. You did not get here tonight on your own. Somewhere behind you there were hands that kept you. A parent, a stranger, a friend, a teacher, someone who prayed for you when you did not know it, someone who held on to you through a season when you might have been let go. Even the fact that you are here, breathing in the dark, listening to an old book at the end of a long day, means that you have been carried across your own 3,000 years of small mercies, hand to hand to hand. You were not let go everywhere at once. You were kept, and you are being kept still. And there is one more turn of this mystery I want to offer you before we close the circle, and it is the tenderest one. The Book of Jubilees imagines itself being written down by Moses so that it would reach a distant future, so that generations not yet born would read it and remember and return to the rhythm of God. In a very real sense, its ancient authors were writing across the centuries toward a reader they would never meet. They were writing, though they could not have known your name, for tonight, for this night. For you, lying here in the dark, at the far end of the long calendar, receiving at last the words they set down so that they would not be lost. They were writing for tonight, and the story has reached its reader. The circle is closed, the lost book has been found, and it has found you. And is that not a quiet answer to the loneliness so many of us carry? The fear that no one really sees us, that we could slip out of the world unnoticed. Here is a message sent across 3,000 years, sealed in jars, carried over mountains, translated by strangers, all so that it could arrive on this night, in this room, for you. You were seen, in a sense, before you were born. You were part of why the book was kept. You are the reader it was waiting for. You are not unseen. You are not unknown. You are the one the story was traveling toward all along. Rest now, breathe slowly, and let your shoulders drop. The mystery is answered. The forbidden book was not destroyed, and it was not too dangerous to be spoken. It was simply set aside by some and treasured by others and kept against every odd until it could reach you. And in the final chapter, we will set the ancient story fully down, and I will speak only to you about what all of this means for you tonight as you drift toward sleep. Let us go, gently, into the last of it. Chapter 12. What the Jubilee means for you tonight. We have come to the last chapter, and here I am going to set the ancient book gently down. No more angels for a moment, no more giants, no more flood, no more scrolls in desert caves. Just you, and the quiet, and the one great gift this whole book has been carrying toward you all night long. Because everything we have walked through tonight was really only leading here, to you, lying in the dark, and to a single word that belongs to you now. Jubilee. Let me gather it up for you simply. The Book of Jubilees is, at its heart, a book about time, and about the mercy that God wove into the shape of time itself. It is the book of the division of the days, and its deepest secret is this, that the God who made the calendar built release into it, built rest into the 7th day, built freedom into the 50th year, built a homecoming into the far horizon of all things. From the first Sabbath in the morning of creation to the great and final Jubilee at the end of the age, this book insists on one unshakable truth. You were not made to carry your burdens forever. There is a release appointed for you. There is a rest built into the very structure of the world, and it is waiting, and it has your name on it. So let me speak the Jubilee over you now, gently in 3 ways before you sleep. First, the debt you carry can be released. Whatever you owe tonight, and I do not only mean money, whatever guilt, whatever regret, whatever failure has been compounding in you for years, until you can barely remember a time you did not carry it, hear the trumpet. There is a Jubilee. The debt does not have to be carried to your grave. It was never meant to be. In the deep logic of God, the 50th year comes, and the scales are wiped clean, and the one who owed everything walks free. You are allowed tonight to set the ledger down. You are allowed to stop counting what you owe. The release is real, and it is for you. Second, the rest you long for is holy, and it is not a failure. You may have believed somewhere deep down that your need to stop, to lie down, to be still is a weakness, that a stronger person would keep going, keep producing, keep earning their place. But the Book of Jubilees tells you that rest was blessed and sanctified on the 7th morning of the world, before anyone was tired, before anything was wrong. Your longing to rest is not laziness. It is holy. It is the shape of the 7th day, still alive in you, calling you home. So the stillness you are sinking into right now is not a defeat. It is obedience to the oldest and gentlest law there is. You are keeping the Sabbath simply by letting yourself rest. Third, you are not out of step, and you are not behind. Remember the great fear of this book, that people would lose the calendar, drift out of the rhythm, fall out of step with sacred time. If you have felt that way, if you have felt that everyone else knows the rhythm and you missed it, that you are always a little behind and can never catch up, then hear the last gift of the book. The calendar of grace is always turning, and it always comes back around, and there is a place in it for you tonight. You have not missed your life. You are not too late. The Jubilee does not depend on your keeping perfect time. It comes because God appointed it to come, and it is coming for you. Rest here now in all three of those, for a long, long moment. The debt released, the rest made holy, the rhythm returned. Breathe deeply and let it all settle into the quiet. And now let me ask you to do one small and gentle thing, here at the end. In your mind, picture the weight you have been carrying. Whatever it is, whatever shape it takes, the thing that was heavy on your chest when you first lay down tonight. Do not fight it. Do not analyze it. Just picture it gently held in your two hands. And now imagine setting it down. Not throwing it, not hurling it away, just laying it down beside you, the way you would set down something you have carried a very long way. You do not have to pick it back up tonight. It will keep until morning if it needs to keep at all. But for now, for these last quiet minutes before sleep, you are allowed to have empty hands. You are allowed to be someone who is not carrying anything. You are allowed to simply rest. That is what the Jubilee is in the end. It is the day you are allowed to set it down. And that day is tonight. That day is now. Because here is what I most want you to know. As the ancient book goes silent and only the stillness remains. All of it. The angels made on the first morning, the garden and its slow years of peace. The flood and the leaf and the bough in the clouds, the secret calendar, the trumpet of the Jubilee, the great homecoming at the end of the age. All of it is really the story of a God who does not forget his people, and does not leave them in their debt, and does not let them be lost. That is the true hidden history behind Genesis, not angels and giants, mercy, mercy, written into the shape of time from the first day to the last. And that mercy is bending tonight toward you. So hear these words over you as you drift toward sleep. You are not defined by what you owe. You are not behind. You are not out of step with anything that matters. You are not forgotten. You have been carried here hand to hand across 3,000 years of small, faithful mercies, and you are being carried still. You are held. You are loved. You are safe. And there is a Jubilee, a great and final homecoming, glowing at the end of all your days, and every night that passes brings it nearer, including this one. Let the weight of today go now. All of it. You do not have to carry it here. You are held. You are loved. You are safe. Let us bring this night to its close. Closing and prayer. We have walked a long way tonight, you and I, through one of the oldest and most quietly forbidden books in all of history. We have stood on a burning mountain and listened to an angel begin a story. We have watched the angels made in the morning of the first day, and the garden planted, and the slow years of peace before the sorrow. We have seen the watchers come down, and the world go wrong, and the flood rise, and the grief in the heart of heaven, and the leaf carried back in a bird's beak, and the bough set in the clouds as a promise. We have heard of Mastema and his bargain, and Noah's prayer for his grandchildren, and the medicine given even in the shadow. We have climbed to the secret calendar of the heavens, and the great number that never breaks the rhythm of the week. We have arrived at the trumpet of the Jubilee, the release, the debts forgiven, the exiles brought home. We have followed the book across 3,000 years, from an Ethiopian monastery to a desert cave to this very night, and we have let it all bend at the last toward you. It is a great deal to have walked through in a single night, and you were never meant to remember all of it. The names will fade, the numbers will blur, the details of the watchers and the calendar and the caves will slip away by morning, and that is exactly as it should be, because you did not come here tonight to study. You came here to rest. So do not hold on to any of it too tightly. Let the facts drift off like the last light of the day. What matters is not that you remember the book. What matters is that the book has done its quiet work on you, that some of the weight is lighter now, some of the fear is smaller now, some of the debt feels, for the first time in a long while, like it might one day be released. And through all of it, one truth has been quietly repeating itself, like a refrain sung softly over a sleeping child. You are not meant to carry your burdens forever. There is a release built into the shape of the world. There is a rest that was made holy before you were ever tired. There is a homecoming appointed for you at the end of all your days. Even when the book was darkest, even in the flood, even in the fall, even in the long silence when it seemed the book itself was lost, mercy always had the last word. And mercy will have the last word over you too. So whatever you carried into this night, let it be lighter now. The conversation that replayed too many times, the worry that settled in your chest and would not leave, the tiredness that goes deeper than sleep can reach, the debt, the regret, the quiet fear that you are behind and cannot catch up. Let all of it go, just for tonight, just for now. There is a jubilee. You are held, you are loved, you are safe. Let us pray. Father, we come to you at the end of this long day, and we are tired, and you know it. You have known it since the 7th morning of the world, when you bless the rest that we so badly need. We thank you that you did not only give us laws, but that you gave us a story, that you sent your angels to tell us we belong to something older and larger and kinder than our small and weary lives. We thank you that you wrote mercy into the very shape of time, that you built release into the calendar, that you appointed a jubilee and a homecoming and a rest with our names upon it. For everyone listening tonight who is carrying a debt too heavy to name, we ask you for the trumpet of release. Let them set the ledger down. For everyone who believes they are behind, out of step, too late, remind them that your calendar of grace is always turning, and there is a place in it for them still. For everyone who feels forgotten, kept in some overlooked cave or mountain of a life that no one seems to be watching, let them know they are being kept by you and found by you at exactly the right time. We do not ask you tonight to explain everything. We do not need every mystery solved. We ask only for your presence, that they would feel you here, in the dark, near and gentle and unhurried, the way you were near to Moses on the mountain and near to Noah on the water, and near to a lost book in a desert jar for 2,000 years. Stay with them as they fall asleep, and carry them hand to hand into tomorrow. Amen. Sleep now, beloved. You are held, you are loved, you are safe. The debt is released, the rest is holy. The rhythm has returned, and the great jubilee is drawing nearer with every breath you take. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace, a deep, unbroken seventh-day peace, the peace that was blessed in the morning of the world and has your name on it tonight. If this message reached you tonight, share it with someone who needs it and subscribe so you never miss another. This is Night Psalms, and we will walk with you again soon. Good night. Sleep well. Amen.